GMAT Reading Comprehension. My name is Rajat Sidana, one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. In this webinar, we're going to talk about reading strategies. Reading strategies are the foundation of GMAT RC, and the core audience in this for this webinar is those folks who are not voracious readers, who essentially are in that, you know, 30th to 70th percentile range, and who are aiming for that 90th percentile score in GMAT reading comprehension. So in this webinar, I'm gonna talk about what those reading strategies are. I'm gonna demonstrate 3 of those strategies through the various examples, and just within this webinar, you'd really see a significant difference in your ability to comprehend uh, passages. And if once you post this webinar, then we're going to talk about what should you do next, so that you cement those strategies, and then so that that change becomes permanent. Um, so for those of you, or how many of you are e-GMAT customers, which means that you have a paid account with e-GMAT? I'm going to actually uh, clear all answers. So how many of you are paid students? So if you're a paid student, select yes. If you're not a paid student, then select no. If you're just checking the free trial out, then select no. So for those of you who are paid students, of course, you have the full RC course to go through. But for those of you who are checking out the free trial, just make sure you understand there's a lot in the free trial that you can check out. There are video lessons on main point. There's lessons on inference. There's also SC, CR, number properties, as well as algebra, and as well as a bit of IR in the free trial as well. So definitely check that out overall. Also, we have a few webinars. Since most of you are taking the current edition, geometry is still really important for you. So we have a geometry webinar that is tomorrow, exactly the same time. So if you want to know more about how to answer 700 level questions on quadrilaterals, you can register for this now. And then we have a free webinar on GMAT sentence correction. In this, we talk about the famous meaning-based approach that my co-founder Pal Tandon pioneered about a decade ago. That's become the industry standard right now. So we'll discuss that approach exactly a week from now. Okay. All right. With that, I usually ask this question. It helps us understand a bit about the makeup of this group. When do you guys plan to take the test? So what we see is that there are 2 large groups over here. One is those who have more than 60 days. And then the second, actually, those numbers are changing as we've gotten more people, and we have about 80 folks here right now. So more than 60 days, definitely a large group, but then you have 3 more or less equally sized groups, 15 to 30, 31 to 45, and 46 to 60 days or so. So that's good. So with that, let me go right into the webinar pane. The screen will have changed for you, or probably would be in the process of changing depending on your geographic location. So the moment you see the presentation that says GMAT Reading Comprehension Strategies to Read 90th Percentile, that's when the screen has settled down for yourself. All right. So with that, let me go right into the core of this webinar. Okay. All right. So I want you to tell me how you approach GMAT RC today, and I'm going to put in a poll question here. So there are usually 3 approaches to GMAT reading comprehension. One is where people actually skim through the passage initially, and then come back to the passage as soon as once they see the questions. The second is some people read questions first and then come back to the passage to find answers. And then the third approach is where people spend time reading the passage, and then there's an initial investment of time, and then from there, that point on, you go on and go to the question and only come back to the passage as needed. Okay, let's get a few more responses. I have 33 responses out of 81 students. I want to get at least 50 responses before I broadcast results. So 38, 39 responses. What's your current approach to GMAT reading comprehension? All right, 48. Good. I have more than 50 responses. That's wonderful. Uh, it's very interesting. Those who chose number 3, a lot of you put your responses of first upfront, and then I had really had to uh, persuade those two who chose either one or two, and you guys were reluctant to put in your answers. So let me broadcast results, and you can see, but 2/3 of the class spends the initial investment, puts in the initial investment, and then goes to questions. This is the approach that we recommend as well. And but then there are about 1/3 of you who are in either approach one or approach two. So my objective today will be for those of you who are doing number three to help you get more out of the passage, so that you get through the passage faster and with much higher accuracy. So I'm going to really talk about those reading strategies overall. For those of you who do either one or two, my goal will be to demonstrate that when it comes to hard RCs, you, one or two will not work. There's no way it can work, and for good reason, so that you give approach number three a fair shake. Okay. With that, let me move forward. So, another poll question: what's the level of understanding that you guys have before you start answering questions today? And again, there's a poll question. Throughout this webinar, we'll have lots and lots of poll questions, and my goal really is to make sure that we get good quantitative as well as qualitative input through these poll questions, so that when you have quantitative data, it becomes really easy to draw inferences, and then track changes as well as students track improvements or degradation in performance. Where you have qualitative data, not all data can be quantified. When you have qualitative data, that kind of helps us get that aspect, and we use those qualitative inputs to refine our sessions. All right, again, I'm looking for 50 responses. I have 33, 34 responses overall. What's that level of understanding? Okay, 40 responses, 46, 47 responses. I need 3 more people. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. 52 responses overall, I think. And you can see half the class is in that 50 to 75% overall. And then we have a few folks who have less than 50% understanding, and then very few folks who have in that 90 to 100%. And my goal really would be to get more and more of you in that 90 to 100%. And what you'd really see is that, as we talk about reading strategies, as you talk about applying them, you'd see that there's just so much to extract from a simple set of sentences as well, once you focus on keywords and the aspects that those keywords imply. So we'll do that, and you'll see your ability to comprehend and extract information that's going to go up as well. So as I said, the first thing would be to really make sure that you improve your level of understanding. One of the metrics that I have is I want each one of you to be able to extract twice as much from the passage as you're doing today, and that's going to be possible using reading strategies. Now, when we say twice as much, what we're going to focus on is doing twice as much from a manager's standpoint, not from an engineer standpoint. A lot of us read GMAT RC the way we do engineers. The way engineers do, where if there's a certain level of detail, we go into that detail and we try to justify, even though that information may not be present there, why something's happening. Is it even logical, and so on and so forth. So we try and kind of go behind the causality of information that's presented in there. We're going to not do that. We're going to focus more on the understanding the information that's presented, the emotion behind that information, which, by the way, would be clearly cited. And then we'll focus more on drawing inferences from it rather than establishing reasons or causality from it. And you'd really just see what I mean by when I say reading like an engineer versus reading like a manager overall. And again, we'll of course demonstrate everything that we talk about through passages, whether small or big. We'll through these small passages, we'll do this on first on a main point question, and then on an inference question. And then once we've understood how to apply these strategies, how to go about reading carefully, we're going to take a full length GMAT RC and then apply the same strategies. And here, as we do this, you're going to see much better results. You're going to see your ability to reject answer choices that are incorrect. That is going to go up. Okay. All right. One of the biggest things that's, I think, really important when it comes to acing GMAT or RC is having the right attitude. Why? Because um, if you don't have that attitude of getting immersed in the passage, then you're not gonna focus on reading like a manager and drawing inferences. You're not gonna visualize information that once you read this. So one thing that I want each one of you to really do just for these 2 hours, and trust me, when you do that, you're going to enjoy GMAT RC, is to really focus uh, on learning. Okay. The second thing is just make sure that your attitude is there to get immersed in the passage. So I'm going to just say ATT over here. And the third thing is, as you're reading, try and visualize information on there. Just for this, and you're going to enjoy GMAT RC. And frankly, GMAT RC, how many of you can hate RC because of the kind of passages that's there? Just type it out in the short answer part. How many of you really say, hey, why the hell is GMAT RC? Why do I need to learn about these topics in humanities and so on and so forth? How many of you hate GMAT RC or really have a dislike for it? You may not hate it. Okay. Unfamiliar topics too. And there's nothing, frankly, you are here, you're spending your time over here. It's really important for you to participate. And I'd like to see a few more example responses here. One thing that GMAT RC does, and that's very, very specific to the GMAT, is that even though you have a passage that is at the most 425 words, you get a complete thought, a complete opinion in that. And I think it's an opportunity to learn really, to do a lot of learning, because it's a very concise passage in that short time. So if you have that attitude of learning something new about an area, then you would absolutely love GMAT RC. Okay. And then that's the attitude that I want you to have. The second thing that I want you to do is apply reading strategies, and this is where we'll go from an atomic to a molecular to an entity level, where at while you're reading a sentence, I want you to understand sentence structure. I want you to be able to just break long sentences into chunks, understand the meaning of those chunks, and then visualize it. And then as as you read this within a paragraph, you'd see keywords. Every GMAT RC passage has between 5 and 15 keywords. So, so 5 is the bare minimum that I've seen. It's more between 12 to 15. Some longer ones even have 20 to 25 keywords. So I want you to understand what those keywords imply, because those keywords have hidden meanings, have meanings hidden in them, and that's where a lot of visualization happens. I want you to predict what's going to happen based on the fact that you've read a keyword. And a lot of this happens within a paragraph. So in RC, typically, it could be one paragraph, but most RCs are two, or some are even three paragraphs. So I want you to do that. And then the other piece was, prevent your brain from getting overwhelmed. That's really important. Depending on how much you read, uh, you may have an ability to retain and visualize information. So if you read a lot, you can probably read 3 sentences before you need to summarize it. If you don't read a lot, then right off the bat, you may have to read a sentence, and then you may have to pause, summarize it in your brain, and write down 1 or 2 words, and then move on. What your current situation is what it is. If you prevent your brain from getting overwhelmed, what you're going to find is your capacity to read continuously is going to increase tremendously. If you let your brain get overwhelmed, you're going to find that your capacity to improve is not to read and retain is not going to improve. It's very similar to working out. Once you let your once you go out of breath, uh, continuing working out at a certain intensity becomes really challenging. That's the same thing that applies to GMAT RC as well. So don't let your brain get overwhelmed. Don't just continue reading pieces of information just because you're reading. If you don't understand, if you feel that your ability to understand has gone down, then slow down. Make sure you go back and reread. How many of you do that? Just read stuff in a single stretch and then really wonder, hey, what the hell did I just read? How many of you do that? Yeah, don't do that. Don't slow down. Um, the best advice that I can give you with regards to GMAT RC is read slowly. The slower you read, the faster you'll get done with the passages, especially the difficult ones. Ankur was asking, when can I see the recordings, or where can you see the recordings? The recordings go to they're on a YouTube channel, and you can see them there. We'll share the recording. It's in about 9 hours or so. Okay. Um, Main point is going back again and again to mark and choose the right option, basic dilemma. That's a symptom. If you're going back, Veer, again and again, then it's a symptom of the fact that you're not comprehending what's there in the passage. Once you comprehend what's there in the passage, you will not go back. Main point and inference are really difficult for me. Again, if you're systematic about it, you'd find there's nothing difficult overall. Okay, so we will apply these strategies. We've talked a lot about theory. Let's kind of go into application. I'm going to give you two really small passages. Each of these passages contains just one long sentence. So really, really long simple passages, but or short passages. I won't call them simple. Let me just be very clear. They're not simple. They're short passages. So the length is not going to be a problem. Timing is not going to be a problem because I'm going to give you ample time. And thank you very much for those of you who are selecting still solving. I need 30 people to select still solving before I show the passage. 11. Let's get 30 people to select still solving. Overall, good. I have 31, 32. I'm going to put this poll over here. What I want you to do is I'm going to show you just the passage without the answers. You'll have about a minute and a half. That way you focus your energy. I want you to write your summary, type your summary in here, and write that. Okay, so here's the a single sentence. You'll have a minute to read this, read it, and put your summary in here. And I'm not going to broadcast results, but you type in, press enter, and the moment you press enter, I will get the summary, and then after a minute, I am going to show you the poll question and you can put your responses in the poll. So I'm going to mute myself for about a minute. All right, that's excellent. I have about 10 responses. I would prefer to see a few more overall. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds. Just press enter if you've typed your response, but if not pressed enter, then it won't come here. Press enter. It'll come here. You won't still see it, but I have it. So trust me with that. So I'm going to share this after you put in your poll questions. 3, 2, and the reason why this is going to be interesting is what it'll let you see is how different people actually, by reading the same piece of information, put in different responses. So here's your poll question here, and here are the options. So you can choose one of 4 options. It's there, and here is the passage at the bottom as well. So if you want to refer to the passage again, you have that, although you shouldn't need to, but if you want it, you have it. Right? About 75% of you are done. I want the remaining 25% to choose an option so that we can discuss what's correct and what's not. 3, 2, and 1. 91% of you are done with this. I'm going to hide the passage and I'm going to end the poll. Come on, put those answers in. 6 of you who are still left, get those answers in. Choose a side. You may be wrong, but you'll get feedback. 3, 2, and 1. We end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results. And again, those of you who are in the still solving, it's just pick a side. It's just don't be afraid to be wrong, because that's the only way you're going to get feedback. This is what I call as a no risk environment. No one's judging you. No one's broadcasting your names out there. But if you don't choose a side, then what you're going to find is that you don't get feedback. You still say, I could have gotten it right. Whereas most likely you would have gotten it wrong, and then you would have gotten feedback as to why you chose an option over another one, why you rejected the wrong one and chose the right one. Why you rejected the right one and chose the wrong one. I'm sorry. But yeah, fascinating responses. You can really see B, C, and D are really, really popular. Um, and I think one of the things that you notice, let me bring the short answer poll. This is how you guys, these were your summaries overall. And you'd see how the answers, the variety in answers, is a reflection of what you took from the passage itself. In this case, so some of you really said talks about one definition of EC, which the author considers as almost extreme. That's a really, really uh, good answer. Um, Others have focused on the correlation between in groups and out groups, uh, and the details in the definition over there. So others have focused purely on the fact that EC is a differentiation between cohesion in the in group and hostility with the out groups overall. And you can really see how, again, different people have gotten different things out of it. And I think for me, this is fascinating. Why? Because it just shows how you're reading and where you need to focus on. I hope it's the same for you as well. So with that, let's kind of get to explaining get to understanding what this passage is doing, so that we get to this. So one of the first things that you see over here is this term bordering on the extreme. Okay. What does the word bordering on the extreme mean? Bordering on the extreme. What does it mean? It means it's an outlier, you could call it. It's almost on the extreme side. It's an exaggeration, an extreme view. Yeah, or I'd prefer to call it an exaggeration. So bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC considers it a schismatic in-group out-group differentiation. Now, why does the author say one definition of EC? Okay, bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC. Why does the author use the word one definition? What do you infer from it? The word one definition. There are multiple definitions. That's good. It's not the author's definition. It's one way to define EC, but it's not how the author will most likely define it. How many of you got this? That this is one definition. It's probably not the author's definition. How many of you got both of it? Both of these things. A, it's one definition. B, it's probably not the author's definition. It's someone else's. The author is merely presenting information. How many of you got that fact? Both these two facts. It's one of many, and then this one's not the author's definition. The author is merely presenting. How many of you got it when you were reading? Let me be very, very specific. Again, I have 40 responses out of 84 people here. Come on, I need more participation. How many of you understood both of those things? And this is what's going to make a difference. But half of you got it, the other half did not. Okay, and that's really important. This is when I really say reading like a manager. These are the things those are important. One definition of EC considers it a schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation. So how many of you, when you read the word schismatic, you were confused? What the hell does this word mean? I'm reading it for the first time in my life. Okay. All right. Really, really good. So when I read this passage for the first time, it was made by one of our other experts. I didn't know what it was as well. And one thing that I really know about RC in general is that there'll always be context. GMAT RC is not a test of vocab. So as someone said, but I move on with the context. That's a really good strategy to do. Okay. So bordering on the extreme, there's one definition that considers it some sort of differentiation. What kind of differentiation? In which these things, internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in group. Okay. How many of you, and I'm going to put in another yes and no poll, how many of you really just tried to understand the nuts and bolts of these things? Internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in group. Just yes or no. How many of you tried to understand the nuts and bolts of these things? What does this mean in the context of what we are talking about? But half of you did that. Just that level of detail that you're going into when you have elements in a list, that's kind of reading like an engineer. I don't want you to do it. I don't want you to completely ignore it either. Let me be very clear. But I don't want you to really go into the nuts and bolts and really say, hey, what implication does this have? If it's not written explicitly, don't go there. That's reading like an engineer. Read like a manager. The way I would read it is and thank you for being that honest. That's really useful. Um, it's some sort of a differentiation, I would call it. I understand the word differentiation. I would call it some sort of a differentiation where you're talking about in groups and out groups, or two different groups in which these things, peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in group, are correlated with correlation means happening together with a state of hostility towards out groups. So good things for the in group, hostility towards out groups, and those out groups are perceived subhuman, which means below human, and or incorporation of evil. So essentially, I love my people, I hate outsiders. That's essentially what I would really say. And this is one definition of EC. That's all there is. All right. So first of all, it's given as an exaggerated so bordering on the extreme means, as I said, exaggerated definition. It's some differentiation in which love for your people is linked with hatred towards outside. Okay. Okay. So essentially, what the author is doing over here is he presents one definition of EC. He indicates that that definition is, extreme, it's exaggerated, and then, as per this definition, these things happen. All right. Arunita, really good point. Where she said, if instead of one, if the word were the, if instead of this word, this were the, forget about it, then would it be author's definition? Absolutely, that's what it would be. Really good point. And I like how you're thinking. All right. Is it difficult to get this out of it if you're systematic? If you're systematic, if you focus on the right things, is getting this just out of this, is that difficult? No. You just have to stay focused on what's important and what's not important overall. And that's really important. Why is that irony? I don't know where irony is written over here, and I don't know where you got that from. Okay. So essentially, we have this. Um, then the author says, what's the main idea? What's the main point question? How do we know what's important? That's a great question. Um, so, what's important, if you think about being a manager, your job is to make decisions based on the information that's provided. Your job is to and purely based on the information that's provided. Your job is not to go into the details of what those things are when that information is not given. All right. So when you think about a lot of the thing about GMAT RC, right? The key thing about GMAT RC is that you're not supposed to have, you know, any background information beyond what's considered very common knowledge. I wouldn't want to use the word general knowledge, but very, very common knowledge. So when you think about a list over here, such as this piece over here, you're not supposed to be experts on what implies what's the result of internal cohesion. You're not supposed to be experts in really what is the in-group out-group differentiation. Not supposed to know that, because lots of engineers who do this, not a lot of people in humanities who go for an MBA. Similarly, when it comes to topics on science, you're not supposed to know what something means unless and until it's explicitly stated in simplified terms, which you will see happen here. So when I say focus on read like a manager, focus on the decision aspect of it. um, that's kind of where don't go in depth into stuff that's not written over there, and try and decode stuff based on your knowledge. That's where people kind of get nervous about things. Why? uh, because as an engineer, or as someone who's in a technical position, whether you're in accounting or as an engineer or a developer, or any functional role, your job is to go in depth into the meaning of technical terms. Here your job is to not worry about technical terms unless and until they are explicitly explained. If they're explicitly explained, of course, you just look at that explanation. But they're not explicitly explained, then don't worry about it. That's all that I want you to do. Keep things simple. Okay. So main idea. Let's just look at how you guys pulled over here. And you'd see this pan out. Very few people chose choice A, but choices B, C, and D are really popular. Choice A says to criticize a concept that encourages hostility towards people not belonging to the same group. First of all, the author doesn't say, EC is bad. The second thing is we don't know. There's nothing over here that says that EC encourages hostility, which means that it's not like a drug that you take and then that makes people more hostile. No, it's not like that. Because of both these things, choice A is wrong. People who chose choice A, is that clear to you why choice A is wrong? Okay. Let's look at choice B, to evaluate the concept of EC while enlisting its various features. What does the word evaluate mean? What does evaluate mean? Evaluate means when you're presenting the positives or pros and cons of something. Does the author present the benefits and the downsides of EC? Does the author say, because of EC, our society has these disadvantages? Because of EC, those are the advantages? No. There's nothing with regards to pros and cons of EC that's put in place. Okay. The second thing which is also there is the author doesn't list various features. The author just simply says this is what EC is, and so there's a difference between defining something and enlisting its features. An example would be, defining something would be, if you were to talk about a smartphone, you say a smartphone is a device that allows you to be productive while on the move. That's the definition of what a smartphone does. And a feature set of smartphone would be, a smartphone has a large screen, a great camera, a fast processor, and a mechanism to communicate data over high speed. Those are features of a smartphone. The author really defines what EC is. Doesn't it doesn't explicitly list its various features, even though it may seem like all of these things are correlated with that. That's the very definition of EC. There could be lots of other things which are features of EC. Okay, people who chose choice B, can you really see both why this it's wrong because of evaluation and this piece over here? Let's look at choice C, to define the concept of EC, which leads to hierarchy among social groups. So when you think about to define the concept, and someone really said, this is the concept means the author's definition. The definition that the author's sharing with us, it's not his definition. It is one definition. It's an extreme definition. Okay, so you can't really call it the concept of EC. And then the other thing which is there is, there's no mention of, some, and then this is where reading like an engineer hurts you. You kind of led to hierarchy among social groups as the fact that in group and out group differentiation kind of implied this as hierarchy. The second thing is EC doesn't lead to hierarchy. What the author really says is, in EC this happens. It's not that the EC doesn't cause hierarchy among social groups. Correlation means these things happen together. It's not causality. Okay. People who chose choice C, is that clear to you? Why is this wrong? How an inference is something that you are 100% sure that's true based on the information that is provided. When you say the word might be and inference is the same line, then you are wrong right then and there. And inference is a 100% certain. So what I really say with regards to inferences, if you have $100 and if you were to bet on a statement, if you bet those $100 on that statement that this is true, then that's an inference. Okay. So are you going to bet $100 on this? The answer is no. Okay. Yes, and to define the concept is where you should have just rejected it right then and there. And it's good that this is coming out, because now when you think about it means the authors or the absolute definition, whereas the author really says bordering on the extreme. One definition of EC is this. Which brings us to our correct answer: to introduce the concept of EC by presenting a view on it. Now, prior to reading this passage, you didn't know what EC was. So definitely the author did give you an introduction. And the author really said, hey, this is an extreme view on EC. Bordering on the extreme. One definition of EC considers it blah, 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 blah. Okay. So I am not, so that's why this is correct, first of all. You can really just say this. How is the author presenting a view on it? Oh, very simple. Hold on, let me bring my passage back. When I say bordering on the extreme, one definition, am I not presenting my view on it? Calling something extreme, is that not my view? Where I is the author. So he's presenting a view on it. And this is where, when I say you've got to get way more from a passage than what you're used to getting, and learning like and reading like a manager, that's those aspects that you need to do this. So choice C, if you want to make choice C correct, then you would say to present one definition of EC. Okay, this is a great statement over here. So choice C, if it were to present one definition of EC, then of course it would have been correct. Let's look at this piece over here. Doesn't it feel like the author agrees? So Shubhat, that should answer your question as well. The author agrees or accepts this definition of EC. Does it feel like that when the author says bordering on the extreme? Does it feel like that the author accepts that definition when he says the author starts the passages bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC? No. If the author agreed with that definition, you see, it's a one acceptable definition or one extreme yet very plausible definition of EC. Or it's the definition of EC which some people consider extreme. What's the meaning? Abba says, what's the meaning of schismatic? Well, Abba, I'm not very certain, but it's systematic, more or less. Okay. The author here is merely presenting information. The author is not making a claim here. And this ability to distinguish between presenting information versus making a claim is a critical thing that's tested. Now, how many of you have been studying GMAT RC for over 10 days? How many of you have studied GMAT RCO for over 10 days? And again, I understand this is confusing, but we'll do 10 examples of 10 such instances of it, and this will be absolutely clear. So if you've been studying GMAT RC for over 10 days, and again, please put your questions in the Q&A pod, because I have to clear the short answer pod again and again. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds to copy and paste your question in the Q&A pod overall. Okay, please put those questions. I'm going to clear those questions from the short answer poll over here. If you've studied for that, how many of you have actually understood or focused on the difference between presenting information versus really making claims himself or herself? How many of you understand that? The difference between presenting information and making claims. Okay, not clear. How many of you understand that well? What's the difference between presenting information and making claims? Because if you understood this well, you should have gotten this right. Okay, perfect. That's good. Rishikesh says, from the passage, is he opposed to the definition? That, does the author seem opposed to you? Does the author seem opposed to you? Here's the passage again. Bordering on the extreme one definition. No. All the author is saying is this seems like an extreme definition. It doesn't seem like the most precise definition, but the author is not saying I'm opposed to this definition or don't consider this definition to be super inaccurate. No. The author is just giving you information over there. And which is where, don't go, yeah, bordering on the extreme, it's an extreme definition. It may not be the most accurate definition. Okay. It doesn't mean I'm opposed to it. Okay. So, how many of you look at rankings when it comes to business schools? Put your answer in the short answer pod. How many of you look at rankings? Okay. Are the rankings always accurate? The B school rankings, are they always accurate? No, they're not always accurate, right? Does it mean they're rubbish? If we know the rankings are not accurate, but it doesn't mean that they're rubbish. No, right? So this is an extreme definition. Doesn't mean I'm opposed to it. Got it? Do you understand the difference about being opposed to something versus really saying, hey, this may not be the most accurate thing out there, but yes, it's still useful. Okay. So a lot of times things may still be useful even though they're not the most accurate. Okay. Really important. And then again, and I understand for those of you who are engineers who are scientists, this may be slightly confusing because we as engineers and scientists are used to black and white. This is a shade of gray in between, and it's really important to understand that shade of gray. Okay. All right. For those of you who made a mistake, why did you make a mistake? How are you going to correct it? Why did you make a mistake? How are you going to avoid making one again? Come on, put those answers in so that we can go on to the second question. But the second question is more fun. Pay attention to certain words. Read carefully. Read slowly and thoroughly. Okay. Understand the passages and the opinions. Read Mia says, I need to read carefully. I missed certain keywords. Good. Don't pay attention to the author's intent. No, you've got to pay attention. Don't get bogged down by details. Yes. Ignore the word one. All right. Good. So again, a lot of people focus on doing RC quickly. How many of you really just focus on doing RC quickly? How many of you look at the clock when you're doing RC? That's one of the worst things you can do. I will, I'll tell you this. If you do GMAT RC with the attitude that I am going to read this passage so well that there is nothing that I won't understand, okay, you're going to find that after 20 passages, you won't have timing issues. If you focus on skimming, you can do 500 passages, you will still have timing issues. Okay. Right now, you might even take 10 minutes to understand the passage. That's why, and that's absolutely okay as long as you understand the passage. Okay. There are three things that I want you to do. Make sure you read the passage and visualize information. Really, really important. And to do that, you've got to leverage keywords. The second thing is do the same thing with answer choices. And that's really important. Same thing. Read slowly, read them in isolation. A lot of people really just read the answer choice in a single breath, don't understand it, and simply ask the question, is this correct? Is this wrong? Should I reject it? Should I keep it? How many of you do that without understanding the answer choice? Just really say, is this right? Is this wrong? Don't do that. Change your behaviors. The more you change your behaviors, the faster you'll improve. And the last piece is understand the question stem. Now, the question stems that you have in these two simple passages are very, very simple. But then as we go through the full length passage, you're going to really uh, uh, find that in the full length passage, there are some more sophisticated question stems. So number 3 over here is really going to apply to that aspect. Okay. All right, let's move forward. Okay, so short answer part. I'll give you about a minute. Again, you guys know you need to put in the passage summary. Here is the passage. I'm going to mute myself and turn in your notes as you read. All right, get those answers in. I have about 10 responses so far. I'd like to get a few more. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to broadcast results so you guys can see how you guys have what you guys have said over here. All right, that's good. Now I'm going to put in the poll question. You guys actually know the drill. Let's focus on getting still solving. About 30 people to say still solving. Before I show the options. 24, 25. 30 people to say still solving. I know I make you do a lot of work before I show you the fun piece. So I'm going to remove broadcast results. Here is the question. Select the correct answer. And for those of you who need to see the passage is here as well. All right, I have about 75% of you are done. Um, okay, 80% of you are done. Let's get those answers in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. This time, I am really, really happy. Only two people are indecisive. Only one person is indecisive. Let's see if we can get that to 0. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. And here's where you can see that one person who's indecisive, but then you can see everyone else has put their answers in. That's really, really good. I'm really happy to see the level of participation. Also, you can see how you guys polled what is it that you said. You can see the variety of things that people got from it, but a lot of you focused on the difference between EC and XC. All right. Okay. So I want you to tell me what's the inference from this particular question. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on moods of people. What can you infer from this? And I'm going to put in a poll question here because, as I said, quantitative data is much more beneficial. So, what can you infer from the statement above? 1, 2, or 3? Some people regard the color blue as soothing, the color blue is soothing, or both of the statements above. I have 40. Oh, 48 responses, two more. Ah, good. 50 responses. Thank you very much. We're much more certain now. I really like that. So 63% of you really say some people regard the color blue as soothing. Another 31% say the color blue is soothing, and then another 6% of you are saying this. Why why did you choose some people regard the color blue as soothing? Why not the color blue is soothing? For those of you who chose option 1. Yes, it's considered. Absolutely. The author is saying, hey, I may not consider it, but it definitely there are some people who consider the color blue as soothing. Okay. Whereas if you were to choose option number 2, which is the color blue is soothing, then what you are really saying is that the author believes that the color blue is soothing. We have no evidence to say that the author believes that the color blue is soothing. Absolutely true. Okay. Is that clear? Is that clear to everyone from this statement? Because the author has said is considered to have, you can only be certain about this. You cannot bet your money on this. Okay. Now, if the author said the color blue has a soothing effect rather than it's considered to, he says has a soothing effect on people, then of course this is a valid inference. This is absolutely correct in that case. And this is a really, really important distinction for you to have. People who made a mistake on the previous question. Is that clear? Okay. Now, let's apply this over here. EC and its canonical variants are deemed to be intimately connected with XP. What does the word deemed to be? Deemed means considered. Okay, so the author is saying is EP and its variants are considered to be intimately connected, which means some people consider EP and its variants to be connected to XP. What is XP? A canonical system cum sentiment structure involving aversion slash dislike and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien. How would you summarize this? How would you summarize this? It was a really, really complex thing. How would you simplify, summarize this? No, summarize. I know this was the definition of an XP, but what's the summary? XP means hate. XP is hate, hatred for aliens. That's basically it. Dislike strangers. Dislike strangers is a perfectly good thing. Absolutely. That's a really, really. They dislike strange people. Absolutely good. Hatred for outsiders. Absolutely good. As long as you're doing this, you're doing the processing that you're supposed to do. Okay. That's simplifying pieces. Really, really important. Zeno dislikes strange one. Good. That's absolutely okay. Now, some sociocultural anthropologists even considered what's the role of this word even? What's the job that this word even is playing over here? Going a step further, going as far as, really important. When you use the word even, it's about emphasis, it's about how much uh, something is considered. So let me just look at this with an example over here. Here's an example that I created, I think, a couple of sessions back. Michael Jordan was the most dominant basketball player of his time. Some analysts even consider him to be the most dominant player of all time. So here, when you can use the word even, it's just saying he's just so dominant that we can consider him to be the most dominant player. So even over here emphasizes the dominance that Michael Jordan had. GDP, and it goes not just in the positive, it can also go in a negative way. GDP is increasingly a poor measure of prosperity. It is not even a reliable gauge of production. Okay, so it's like so bad you can't even consider it to be a reliable gauge. So it's going in the negative direction. Yes, even is used for emphasizing. I mean, it has multiple uses, but when you look at it in this context, it's about emphasis, and it can oh, it will be even in the second example. You mean this one? Absolutely. What it's saying is it's not a reliable measure of production. It's not even a reliable measure of production. So it can't be a poor measure of prosperity. Okay. That's the general idea of even. It's about emphasis over here. Okay. So when you look at this, some socio-cultural anthropologists even consider XP and EC. Let me just make sure I draw the lines properly. Just forgive me. Where is my yeah, I got that. Thank you very much. So when we see even consider XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin, what this is saying is, what is opposite sides of the same coin? What it means is that they are just so closely connected. Remember, they said intimately connected over here. So it's saying that connection is so close that they're practically considered the same. When you say opposite sides of the same coin, what it's saying is they're practically the same thing. But a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. Okay. So what's going on? What the author is saying is that uh, EC and some people consider EC and its variants are that's closely connected to XP, where XP is essentially hatred for aliens. All right, and 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 then some people take that to such an extreme where they say XP and EC coexist, which means they're the same facets of same coin, and but some other experts disagree this to be the case. Okay, so overall, the author defines a new term over here, and it says, hey, some people consider EC and expert to be closely connected, and to such a degree that some other experts consider that they coexist, whereas some others disagree to this level of closeness. That's essentially what it is. Okay, so what's an inference? Remember this: the correct inference in any passage is always, always, always from the point of view of the author. That's very, very important. Okay. Um, so if the author hasn't given any opinion on anything, then you can't make that as a correct inference if the author hasn't provided an opinion on it. Okay, the author may present a lot of information, but that doesn't mean you can draw inferences based on it. All right, now the author, if there are facts presented, of course the author will agree with this, but then you won't usually have an inference question on it. The inference question would usually come on where the author has presented his opinion. Okay, so let's look at your answer choices and which one's correct. Let me present the poll questions here. This is how you guys polled. Choices A, B, D, and E were really popular. Let me hide this. XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. Okay, some experts consider this, but is this the author's view? Absolutely not, which is why this is incorrect. Is that clear to people who chose choice A? Why choice A is not the inference? Remember, an inference is always from the point of view of the author. This is the point of view of some experts, not the authors. The canonical variants of EC are closely connected with XP. Again, this is a deemed view. This is not the author's view. Okay. And then as we say, this view is probably not, it doesn't necessarily indicate. It might not, but we can't be 100% certain. We're not going to bet $100 on it. People who chose choice B was the most popular choice. Is this clear? We cannot use or closely connected. Not connected, no one chose that. That's good. In some cases, XP could be the cause of EC. Do we have any cause effect relationship? Can we really say that XP could be cause of EC? No, we really just say they coexist. Some people even consider them to be opposite sides of the same coin, but we can't really say one causes the other in either direction. And for those of you who chose this, you're kind of thinking again more like an engineer, where you say, hey, just because they're so closely connected, maybe one is the cause of the other. No, in GMAT RC, you don't do that. Okay. Which leaves us to our correct answer. XP entails dislike towards the strange. This is the only statement that the author agrees with, and and this is from here to here, and which is where this is the correct answer. This is what you can infer from the passage. Questions, learnings from this. And while Pratik is, while you put in your answer, Pratik has a question. He says, I've not done RC, but I've completed SC and applying the same meaning-based approach while reading. Is it a good way for RC to? Absolutely, Pratik. Learning GMAT SC is the most fundamental skill in all of GMAT verbal, and in fact also in data insights or IR for you. So yes, absolutely true. All right. So what did you learn from this? What were your takeaways? What were your takeaways from this? You guys made a lot of mistakes, so in this one, and there were lots and lots of learning. Okay, Kushal Kushal says, got idea about inference questions. That's good. The author doesn't always give his or her opinion. That's good to learn. Inference is what the author agrees with. Did not understand the question well. Now I understand. Be careful with arbitrary. These are keywords, not arbitrary words. Call them keywords, and you're going to see more and more keywords. I understand how inference works. Inference is from author's point of view. And again, this is where something which, I mean, you guys have been practicing questions for such a long time, but this is one of the most fundamental things that you have to learn about inference. And this is where, you've got to know uh, the fundamentals before blindly practicing things. This is a practice rarely hurts, leads to wastage of time. Okay. Now I'm going to give you some keywords overall that are there. Here is a list of keywords, and it's by no means a comprehensive list, but you can really see how keywords help. So when you're thinking about changing line of thought, on one hand, on the other hand, it should be on one hand, on the other hand, not one hand. Um, while, rather, all of this change line of thought. Now, while could also be used for two actions happening at the same time. Instead, in contrast, alternatively, all of these change the line of thought. Granted is something uh, we don't really feel like it's changing the line of thought, but it does change the line of thought. In terms of cause and effect relationships, hence is a very common usage, therefore is a very common usage, consequently, of course, is there. For this reason, is something that a lot of people don't understand, that as a cause and effect relationship. Thus is used commonly as well. Providing additional information where you're extending that reasoning is additionally, furthermore, likewise, again is a common one, but it's not a lot of people understand that. Coupled with is another common one, which is, I mean, it's there, but not a lot of people associate uh, coupled with as continuing the same line of thought. And knowing these keywords means that if you have these keywords in your mind, then the moment you read that ability to visualize automatically gets in there. Your point of view as inference doesn't count. That's a good one and absolutely true. Yes. Okay. So go slow, focus on keywords, and make connections. It's really important that you make connections as you read the passage. The only way you do that is by focusing on keywords and summarizing. All right, so I'm going to give you 4 minutes to read the full length passage. Okay. So I'm going to put in a poll question. Once you're done reading, I want you to select yes overall. So not right now. Are you done reading the full length passage? No. So why don't 30 of you select no? That way, when you're done reading, you will have changed your responses to yes. So let's get 30 of you to select no. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're slow. Maybe you'll do way better because you are slow. Get 30 people to select no. Please. 3, 2, and 1. Here is the full length passage. I'm going to actually give you the passage like this. I think this is much better than reading on the slide. So, all right, 4 minutes, guys. I'm going to mute myself during this time. All right, but 40% of you are done. I'm going to give you another minute. It's you've had 3 minutes, so you have one more minute. That should allow most of you to get done. So you have one more minute. Don't rush through. Just to be very clear. And for those of you who are done, just start writing the keywords that you see. I think it'll be a good exercise. Okay, 4 minutes are done, and we've got 75% of you who are done. So I'm going to now move forward. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to solve these questions one by one, and I'm going to put in this over here. Some of you put in your main points as well. That's really good. Thank you very much. I didn't ask for it, but thank you. I really like the fact that you're doing this. That's sure that you're being that diligent. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to reduce the size of the passage. It's still scrollable. You can still do that. Should be able to get to any detail that you have. And on the right hand side, I will have poll questions. And in the middle, you will have your uh, passage. So I want you to select again, still solving. I want about 30 of you to select still solving before I I show the pass. I show the first question. 25, 26. Okay, I'm going to remove still solving, and here is your first question. Last 10 seconds, get those answers in. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to broadcast the results. You can see how you guys did. You guys did really well. Again, this is a 700 level passage. I'm going to hide this. You guys know the drill, still solving. Let's get 30 people to say still solving before I show the question. This is question number 2. Don't choose an option for question number 1. Choose still solving. Remember, look at the title of the poll. It says passage Q2. All right, remove broadcast results. Here is question number 2. I'm going to mute myself. All right, about 70% of you are done. Let's get those answers in. 80% is done right now. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll and broadcast results so you guys can see how you guys have done. All right. Pretty okay. Not as bad. Let's just put in our next question over here. Let's get to still solving. All right, 29 with 30 people. I'm going to remove broadcast results. Here's question number 3. I'm going to mute myself. Okay, about 75% of you are done. Let's get those answers in. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results. Let's get to question number 4. Let's get to still solving. 24. You guys now know the drill. You guys are experts. All right. Here's question number 4. I'm going to remove broadcast results. Good luck, guys. All right, about 80% of the class is done. Let's get those answers in. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results so you guys can see how you guys did. And with that, we're going to come to the last question, and then we're going to discuss this passage. That is the last question. You guys know the drill now. Okay, let me remove broadcast results. Here is the last question. All right, about 75% of you are done. Get those answers in. 80% is done. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. And just everyone but one person did this. That's phenomenal. I love the participation here. And I'm going to broadcast results. Here's how you guys polled. Again, this is where we had split jury, but again, I'll say I absolutely love the enthusiasm. I'm going to hide this, just clear this up a bit more. I'm going to bring back my Q&A part. Just I believe it's just a good habit to have this, so you guys have a place for your questions, a safe place. You guys, so that your name isn't there. Although is used for a contrast. Sometimes it's also used for defense against weakness, but uh, it's used for contrast too. Now, I want to just say one thing. I, I love those who get it right. That's absolutely, you guys have improved. That's tremendous. But then I also saw that there are lots and lots of people um, who didn't get things right, but they had the resilience to stay through, to participate in every question. They didn't just leave um, the session. And I want to give you guys a pat on the back, because that resilience is a true demonstration of as a true attribute that you need if you want to get to that 90th percentile. So well, I want to just, from my side, congratulate you on that, because if you're resilient enough to understand why you're making mistakes, then you will definitely improve if you continue on to do that. But before I go through the passage, I want to ask you, how was this experience reading the passage and then solving the questions? How confident were you? How confused were you uh, overall? So just write that out before we proceed with the passage. How was this experience? Too time consuming? Well, don't worry about timing. Confident at times, and then went on. Got confused in the second paragraph. I think I started paying attention to details. Passage seems known, easy, okay. Reading the passage slowly is really helpful, all right, for me saving time during questions. Didn't have a second glance at the passage post. Reading could answer all questions based on preliminary reading. That's a really good. It takes too much time to read. I mean, if you're still complaining about timing after all this, then I've told you, don't worry about timing overall. um, but if you're still complaining about it, then you're focusing on the wrong thing. Okay. Timing is not a skill that you build for. Timing is an outcome. I was initially confident, but the result of poll discouraged me. Reading the passage is really helpful, saving time during questions. And you can really see different people have different outcomes because they're focused on doing the job at hand. The language is simpler. Absolutely. The language is simpler relatively. It's not simple. Let me just say this. Comparatively, it is simpler. Yes. RC is brainstorming, need more practice to maintain focus. Um, got it. Makes sense. Yes, it is. You've got to read longer text, and that's something which is there that you'd have to do as a manager as well. Okay, you're making notes. That's good. Making note is a good idea after reading the passage. That's really, really good. I was initially confident, but the result discouraged me. Reading the passage slowly is helpful. Good. All right. So you see, there's a multitude of opinions here. This is a 700 level passage. It's a difficult passage overall. So, uh, so let's kind of do the passage analysis. FNM assert. This is assert, which means the author is not providing his opinion. He's sharing someone else's assertion. Overall, assert is a key word, that medical research could be improved by a move toward larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatment. All right. So essentially, there's FNM. Some people, Frazier and Motzeller. You don't need to really pronounce his names. Call them FNM. They're giving a proposal that, hey, we can improve medical research if we do these two things: go towards a larger but and a simpler trial. Currently, what does currently mean? Currently is a really important keyword as well. What does currently mean? Currently means what's happening today, what's happening in the present situation, which means when you really see the word currently, then you'd also see what was done in the past or what might happen in the future. So that's really important. And when you read these keywords, you can really predict what's going to happen going forward, or kind of give one or two options. Currently, researchers collect far more background information on patients than is strictly required for their trials. How much more? Substantially more than hospitals collect. So this is a comparison. In GMAT RC, always focus on comparisons because you will have questions on comparisons. It's very easy to make questions on comparisons. How much more? Substantially more than hospitals collect. Thereby is an outcome keyword, which means as a result of collecting more information is that the costs of data collection, storage, and analysis, they go up. Okay. Then you have another keyword, which is although is a contrast keyword. Limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts relevant to study. So, which means there's a weakener over here, and we're going to present a defense against weakener. So, although limiting information collection could pose a risk, FNM contend. FNM really say, and their contention is that such risk never entirely eliminable from research, would still be small in most cases. What they're really saying is such risk can never be removed, and it's going to be really, really small. Only is another important keyword. What's the importance of only? Only leads to really great inferences. Only means that just in this, only and just are very, very similar keywords, which means that there is just this one area. The exception only is much more of an exception thing. The exception here is entirely new treatments where new and unexpected variables are likely to arise. Okay, so what's going on over here? Only used for exception. Yeah, only you, or when I say only, it means that it defines a segment, which is there's something peculiar about that segment. Only people who score 700 get into Harvard. So we're defining a segment with only, and we're saying they get into Harvard. Only those folks get into Harvard. Doesn't mean everyone who scores 700 gets into Harvard, but for people who get into Harvard, they score 700. Okay. So only is defining a category, or in this case, an exception here. Okay. So per FNM, medical research can be improved. That's, you can see how I'm using the up arrow for improvement by doing two things: going towards larger and simpler trials. There's something that's talked about in the current practice. There's a lot of data that's collected, and which leads to increase in costs. And how much data? That's way more than what hospitals collect. Okay, there's a potential negative collecting less data. You might lose some interesting facts, but then that risk of posed by this is extremely small, and it's substantial only in this one kind of research that's over here. All right, so overall, if you were to summarize this, what you have is you want to simplify trials, and the benefit of a simplified trial could be is explained over here. Okay, then let's move forward. FNM propose not only, again, this is the proposal by FNM, keyword over here. Not only means that's going to be a list about two things, because whenever you have not only, you also have but also. So you have two things that are moving in the same direction. Okay, so not only that researchers limit data collection, we already know, we talked about limiting data collection on individual patients, but also that researchers enroll more patients in clinical trials. Remember, we said simpler, larger trials. So this is the larger aspect of it. Thereby, thereby is another outcome keyword. So as a result of this, obtaining a more representative sample of the total population with the disease under study. Okay. So often means, again, most, what happens most frequently. Another keyword: researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments, besides those being studied. So these are more what we call as ideal patients. A treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions can then be, so this is another keyword which means there's a sequence: step one, okay, and then step two over here, evaluated under normal conditions. All right, so what's going on over here? We're saying there's a second proposal here where we increasing the size of the population that's going under trial, and as per FNM assertion, you're going to really get a much more representative sample of people under disease. Currently, we kind of first go through ideal conditions, and then we do a second step where we treat for normal conditions. Let's move forward. Okay, broadening the range of trial participants. FNM suggests, you can really see how many times the author is just making sure that he's can you really see that there's just so many times the author has really said where he's just presenting information. The author is not making a claim, the author is not backing a claim, he's just communicating information. Can you see that? FNM propose, FNM assert, FNM suggest. Yes, no? And this is the value of understanding what the author is claiming as by himself versus where the author is presenting information, because that's where inferences come in. FNM suggests would enable researchers to evaluate, which means figure out the pros and cons. Again, evaluate is a keyword. Treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions, and to evaluate its effectiveness for different patient subgroups. Again, this is an area where you don't want to be an engineer. All you have to really take away from this is you'd be able to figure out how good a treatment is for different patients. That's all there is. And then the author really gives the examples of that. For example, the value of a treatment for a progressive disease. Again, it's a technical term. Do not let this bog you down. You're not supposed to know what a progressive disease is. May vary according to a patient's stage of disease, patient's ages may also. So he's just giving examples of the benefits you'd really get for by enrolling a diverse set of patients overall. Okay, so when you think about a passage summary, what's going on over here? You have a proposal to improve, and again, you can really see it's really important to get bogged down in the details. Do not lose the forest for trees. Okay, don't get bogged down. It's really, really important for you to understand what's going on. That we have two proposals to improve medical research. One is simpler trial, don't collect as much data. The second is enroll a wider range of participants overall. And the benefits of both of this is, the benefit of first is to reduce the benefit of the first is you're going to reduce cost. The benefit of the second is you'll get more insights. You won't have to do this two-step process overall. So, how do we know? That's a great question. The last two lines are by the author, therefore, his point of view. You are talking about this piece over here. Okay, good. They are not necessarily by the author, okay? Because you see, this is preceded by FNM suggest over here. And the examples are over there. And yeah, so they're not necessarily by the author, but the author, it seems the way it's written, agrees with it. Okay, so they're not necessarily. Yes, and you'll see that question. We'll come to that. We've not discussed every question, so don't worry. The questions aren't going anywhere. The question that was there was not an inference question. What question was this? Was that which was pertaining to these lines? No, but what question was there? It's good. It's good that you asked the question. All I'm saying is, but do you remember what was that question? No, not question for, but what did that question test? Was that an inference question or a different category of question? Does anyone remember? It wasn't inference. It was a purpose question. It says, what's the role that played by these lines? Okay, again, so you can have those other kinds of questions. Remember, we talked purely about inference in this case. And good, these questions should keep on coming because that's where you learn. See, without these questions, I can only know so much about what's going on in your brain, right? I can only know, and Arunita has a follow-up question, which is a great one. But I can only know what's going on in your brain. Only know so much, But then when you have a group of 70, 80, 90 individuals, there's a lot of dynamism that exists in that group. And this is where your doubts, your questions help. So let's go back to this over here. And I'm going to just clean this up a bit more. Where did my palette go? Yes, here is my palette. Let's just clean this up. All right. So let's hide this. Arunita is saying, how can we reduce the author is agreeing with it? So see the word, for example, the value of a treatment for a progressive disease may vary. So what's the job of this? These are benefits. These are examples of the kind of benefits that that the author is that you'd get if you really enroll a wider variety of patients. And the author is just saying, for example, the value of a treatment. So the author is just substantiating F what FNM is saying by the examples most likely that FNM present. Okay, these are just examples to really do this. Now, does it mean that the author agrees with the benefits over here? No, it doesn't mean that. The role of these two lines is are examples of this. Again, by no means, Arunita, is the author agreeing with this piece over here 100%, and by no means is the author disagreeing with it. Okay, we don't know the author's opinion. The author is merely presenting what FNM are saying. Is that clear? Okay. And this is where a lot of people kind of get confused to say, why isn't it black and white? Why can't the author agree or disagree? How many of you are really just saying, why can't the author agree or disagree? Why is there a presenting mode? Okay, there will be times when, let's say you work post your MBA, and you're asked to do some research on a business opportunity. Okay, your boss may ask you to do it, your boss's boss may ask you to do it, and as you do that research, there are certain things that you'd be 100% certain about, and you would really just say, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this, and this is what I agree with, and these are the claims that I put in, and this is the proposal that I am putting in. Okay, that's something where you would, as an author, present the claim, or you might present this XYZ's claim, and you would say, I agree with it. Okay, and there would be some other aspects of it which you feel you're not an expert on it, but they are important for you to present because the person you're presenting to may have prior knowledge for you, for to absorb that piece of information much more coherently. And that's where your job as a researcher is to, in the business context, is to present those facts so that the person who you're presenting those facts to also can make a judgment on it. Okay, so where you're very clear that, oh, don't blame me if this claim doesn't pan out to be true, because I'm merely presenting information. Okay, a classic example is a stock analyst, when the person really says, hey, Reliance has really solid fundamentals. So that's where the stock analyst is making his own claim. So let me just write it down. So as an author, what are you doing in the bolded part over here in black? What are you doing over here in black? And what are you doing here in blue? No, you're not stating a fact, you're making a claim. Reliance has very solid fundamentals, as you as an author is making a claim. Right? And what's happening in blue? Or purple, whatever it is. I'm colorblind, so I get confused between blue and purple, but it's definitely not black. What's happening in that blue or purplish thing? I am presenting a point of view, I'm presenting information to the person who's reading this so that they can make a more informed judgment. This is not my opinion, this is the opinion of most analysts. Okay, what I'm saying is, if this thing over here, I'm going to italicize it as well. If this thing doesn't turn out to be true, do not blame me. However, if the thing in black doesn't turn out to be true, I am to be blamed. If you can't, if Reliance doesn't have very solid fundamentals. Arunati, is this clear? Can we say that the opinion is based on the blue part? No, absolutely not. It actually, in reality, it's the reverse causality. So the fact that Reliance is very solid fundamentals, so if I were to be an expert in this area, the fact that Reliance has very solid fundamentals is probably a factor in the fact that the revenue is going to grow. The fact that the revenue is going to grow is not causing the solid fundamentals, right? Blue is not causing black. Black may cause blue. The and then supporting it. Is blue supporting black? Is blue supporting black in any way? Let me just ask this. No, absolutely not. If blue, yeah, absolutely. Really, really important to know. If I were to reword this statement, then blue is supporting black. And this is essentially the sentence structure. The answer in statement 1 is no. The answer in statement 2 is yes. This is 1 and this is 2. You can see how the structure is there. How the structure changes this. And by the way, I can also write in a different way. What's happening now in number 3? What's happening in number 3 now? What's happening in number 3? Yes, black is supporting blue. Second is the effect, second is the outcome. Same two elements, different play of words. And this is something that's rarely tested in CR, by the way. Not as much in RC, but rarely tested in CR. Okay. Sorry about the segue. I hope that was helpful in some way. Can we come back to the passage? We don't need to load this in RC to the same degree. Although if you want to get to that 90th percentile, this is a distinction that you will learn. But can we come back to the passage? Okay. What's the main idea of the passage? Again, we did that. Simpler trial, larger trial, proposal to improve medical research. All right. So let's do pre-thinking. Passage one, we had larger trials, simpler trials. Passage two, we had larger trials, and we had the benefits of both. So in many ways, if you were to pre-think, it's a proposal. The author is discussing proposal by FNM to improve medical research. Okay, so in the pre-thinking, it's a two-pronged proposal to improve medical research that is explained. I'm going to share how you guys polled on this. I think but 50% of you got this right. So let me put in the poll question so that you guys know. But 63% of you got this right. That's phenomenal. The only popular incorrect option were choices C and E. I'm going to look at this. A and B were not as popular. Let's look at choice C. A lot of people really choose choice C, even though it's really, really complex. Evaluating something, what an analysis of certain shortcoming of medical research practices. Does the author present the pros and cons of any analysis? No. Let's just put this piece over here again. Does the author present pros and cons of any analysis? The answer is no, which is where you should have just rejected this to really say when you're doing an evaluation you of an analysis, is are we talking about pros and cons of any analysis? No. A lot of people choose this because they feel it's a really complex choice. They can't narrow it down to anything else. They don't understand what this choice is saying. If people understand what this choice is saying, they will reject it right then and there. Okay. Am I correct, people who chose choice C? Am I correct? You didn't understand what this choice was saying. You couldn't get to narrow it down to another choice. So you said, let's choose this. It seems sophisticated. We are talking about shortcomings here and current medical practices. And so let me just choose that. Okay. And so this is kind of uh, the last resort kind of choice that a lot of people get to. All right, choice D is my correct answer. Describing proposed changes to ways in which clinical trials are conducted. Yeah, so there's a proposed. We have FNM's proposals. We're describing what that proposal is, and then that proposal is about changes to the way clinical trials are conducted. Okay, choice E was really popular as well. You can see, but 7 of you chose choice E. Explaining how medical researchers have traditionally conducted trial and how such trials are likely to change. Can we be certain that such trials are likely to change overall? No, we don't know that. So we can't really say that it's about this. Now, why not choice A? Okay, choice A says identifying two practices that may affect the accuracy of trials. Yes, we have two practices. Is it going to affect the accuracy of trials? Is there anywhere in the passage that you see that's going to make trials more accurate? Paragraph 1 is talking about reducing costs. Paragraph 2 is talking about by enrolling a larger set of patients, you're going to get more insights right in the single study. We're not going to, nowhere has it said, has it been said clearly that you're going to get insights, way more insights than what you currently get. Yeah, there's nothing like accuracy in the passage. You've got to read each and every word. Okay, Rishikesh says that I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly because I don't know how the H comes in. What if such trials are likely to change when was not there in choice C? If it was not there in choice E, then it doesn't encompass the scope of the passage because the passage is about proposed changes. So then it doesn't do anything. Then it's really easy to reject choice E. Remember, the main idea is going to encompass the reason why this passage is written. So without this part over there in the passage, it only remains explaining how researchers have traditionally conducted clinical trials. Is that the reason why the author has written the passage? Absolutely not. Okay. Pratik says, I'm not sure how pros and cons are not presented in the passage. So, are we talking about the pros and cons of an analysis, Pratik, here? Do you see the pros and cons of any analysis presented in the passage? No. Okay. Pros and cons of any analysis. The benefits of the proposal are there, but is there a pros and cons of an analysis? Okay. Two different things. All right. Let's look at question number 2. Let's see how you guys polled with question number 2. Here's our question number 2 is choice A is the correct answer. Half of you got this right. 51% right means that this is a 700 level question, more or less close to 700 level question. You can see choices D and E were the more popular incorrect options here. Okay. Which of the following can be inferred from a passage about a study of a category of patients? Often researchers restrict study participation to those being studied. So what we have to really just say is, what can we infer about this study? That's really important. So the inference that has to be drawn is about the study. How many of you were able to infer this when you read the question, that we have to worry about what can about this study over here? How many of you were able to infer this from this question stem itself? So what we are really saying is just translating this. We have to draw inferences about the study uh, where we're talking about ideal set of patients. Just even before you think about the passage. Okay. So the question that we have to ask is, what can be inferred about these studies? Okay. And then very simple thing is, the results are very limiting and they only cover ideal conditions. Those are the two things that we can infer about it. Okay. And that's what you go from there. And then let's go to the answer choices. Its findings may have limited applicability. That's the correct answer. Yeah, you've got to do a second step. So this study only has limited applicability. The expensive piece is not mentioned in this context, so we're not going to do that. A lot of people didn't do this. This one is the opposite of what's suggested. Not many of you chose this. Choice is D&E is what a lot of you chose. It would allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk that important variables could be overlooked. Remember, read the entire choice. Now, data collection, is it discussed in this context? Absolutely not. It's discussed in the first paragraph. This is the completely different context. This is the second proposal overall. So do not cross proposals, do not cross contexts in GMAT RC. Similarly, progressive disease versus non-progressive diseases, that example is when you enroll a wide variety of participants, not when you're limiting this. It's a completely different context in this than this. So people who chose choice D and choice E really did not understand what these things were, what these answer choices are talking about, or when the author presented information about progressive versus non-progressive diseases, what's the job that it's doing, and which is where you most likely would have gotten the next question wrong as well. Okay, or question number 4 wrong as well. This is another very interesting question. What can be it can be inferred from the passage? The study limited to patients like those mentioned in the same. We're talking about the same category of patients would have the following advantages, and so, and then again, this is an inference question, very very important. This is an inference question, and say, what's the advantage of this study? And the reason why this was interesting is because the author usually is talking about the disadvantages of this study. But essentially, what's the advantage of the current way of doing things overall? And what are we doing in the current way? We're restricting participations to those patients who just have this ailment, okay, versus the proposed way where we are just enrolling everyone and their mom and dad in their trials. So what's the advantage of this? You actually will have fewer participation, fewer patients to, or rather, to analyze, and or the number of variables that you'd have to really worry about, the analysis that you'd have to do would be much more simplified. Why? Because you only have to worry about this ideal group of patients. Okay. So let's kind of look at the polls. Let's look at how you guys polled for this one. Again, 54% of you got this right. Choice A was quite popular. Choice D was popular, as was choice E overall. So you guys can see how you guys polled in this. Um, it would yield more data and its findings would be more accurate. Again, in this, we did not discuss accuracy. In fact, you could really just say that, hey, accuracy is probably less because you have to do a second step thing. But we cannot infer one way or the other. It definitely won't yield more data because you only have an ideal set of participants. Choice B talks about the cost. Again, cost is discussed in paragraph 1, not in paragraph 2. Limit the number of variables. Absolutely, that's an advantage. You can definitely infer that. Why? Because you're only looking at an ideal set of patients. Choice D really talks about subgroups. Again, not this study. That's the advantage of the proposed study and not this study. People who chose this got confused as to what the question was talking about. Similarly, experimental treatment. We don't talk about experimental treatments. People who are engineers went too deep into the last two lines. They really went over there and really the context is wrong. And in general, even for the other context, we don't really talk about an experimental treatment for the average patient in this case. Now, half of you made a mistake here. Why did you make a mistake, and what are your takeaways from this? Those who made a mistake, why did you make a mistake? And what are you going to avoid doing as you move forward? Come on, put those answers in. Your takeaways are really, really important. Didn't go to the passage to just confirm. What are you going to do? How are you going to fix that? How are you going to improve? If you can't type as there is a poll, I'm going to hide this. And how about now? You should be able to type now. And thank you for the feedback, Ishani. Read carefully. Focus on specific lines only. Perfect. More focus and practice. Good. All right. Let's go forward. Don't call anything a silly mistake, please, because you call things silly mistakes, you're kind of giving them less importance than you should. If you give them less importance than you should, then you don't improve. The author mentions patient ages in the line patient ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy. What's the reason why the author mentions that? It's the example over there. The reason why the author mentions that is to make a point about enrolling a wide variety of patients. That's just to really say this is an example where enrolling a wide variety of patients would be beneficial. Okay, uh, that's something which is there. Okay, so let's see how you guys polled for this one. I think you guys did really well on this one. I think this is the question that had the highest accuracy. 60% of you got this right. Um, choice C is the only one that's popular other than that. And you can really see why choice C is wrong. Indicate why progressive diseases may require different treatment. Does the author really talk about the reason why progressive diseases require different treatment anywhere in the passage? Is that reasoning or no, the author doesn't talk about that anyway. Again, understand what that answer choice is trying to tell you, and then really ask yourself, does the passage do this job? The answer to that is no. Reject that answer choice, move on. You can reject it with 100% confidence. Choice A simply says identify the most critical variable differentiating subgroups. How can you say based on the passage that that ages is the most critical variable. There's no way that that really says that there's no other variable that's more critical than patient's ages. And of course, if you're going towards get casting doubt on the advisability of implementing FNM's proposals, then you're just going in the opposite direction, because the point of this example is to substantiate, to support FNM's proposal. Illustrate a point about enrolling a wide range. Yes, that's true. And substantiate an argument about patients' problems inherent in enrolling a large number of patients. Again, choices B and E are both opposite. They're both, talking about similar things. If you're confused with if you chose either B or E, then you didn't understand the gist of the passage. Again, go back and really see how were you reading it, and then compare and contrast as to how you should have read it. Ishani says, post solving an RC passage, how are we supposed to further improve? How are we supposed to analyze post solving? EG matters. How are we supposed to do that after solving a passage? That's a great question, Ishani. We solve a passage in the context of e-GMAT Scholarium. You have solid reasons as to why something is right and something is wrong. You have solid reasons as to how you should read the passage. We have close to 100 passages in Scholarium, and so understand the reason that we give you for rejecting an answer choice and for selecting one, and understand the reasons that you've taken, and that's kind of how, by doing that compare and contrast, you improve. Okay. Choice E. Question 5. Question 5 is where the accuracy was I think the lowest. In fact, it was only about 25% or so. This is how you guys polled in choice E. One of the key things in choice E is to understand what the question statement is saying. It says, according to the passage, which of the following describes a result of? Result of means outcome of. Okay, outcome of the way in which researchers generally conduct trials. All right, so let's kind of look at this over here. There are two things when we talk about researchers generally collect trials. One is they collect a lot more data than is required, which the result of which is the costs are more and the money is wasted. Or the other thing is they conduct only in ideal conditions. The result of it is you have got to do a two-step process, or the application in real life in that single step is really limited. So that's those are the two results that we can really do in terms of our pre-thinking. Always pre-think. Okay, which is where when you look at the answer choices, uh, 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 choice A is what matches this. That's really, really important overall. Um, let's look at choice C here. A lot of you chose choice C. It was the most popular answer choice. Choice C says they avoid the risk. Let's just go back over here. They avoid the risk of overlooking variables that affect their findings, even though doing so raises their research cost. All right. It's a very tempting answer choice. A lot of people choose this. Let's use the word avoid. I'm going to use one of my old examples over here. So three examples. Avoided giving into my desires. But does it mean that I gave into my desires? Yes, no? No. Avoiding something means not doing something. I avoided Highway 95. Did I go on Highway 95? No. I avoided staying up late. Did I stay up late? No. Avoiding does not mean reducing the likelihood. Avoiding means preventing. Okay. Is that clear? Avoiding is the same as preventing. Correct? Is that clear? When you avoid a disaster, you avert a disaster, you prevent a disaster. It doesn't happen. Okay. The disaster doesn't happen. Although limiting information collection could increase the research risk that researchers will overlook facts, FNM contend that such risk never entirely eliminable. If it's never entirely eliminable, can it be avoided? Can it be avoided? No, it can't be. People who chose choice C. Here is how you guys polled. Is this clear? 38% of you chose choice C. Avoid means prevent. If the risk is never entirely eliminable, can you avoid it? Absolutely not. Which means this choice is wrong. Choice D, because they attempt to analyze too much information, they overlook facts that could emerge as relevant. I have no idea how you would choose this. Nowhere does the passage mention this. And then, oh, this is a 700 level question. In order to approximate the conditions typical of medical treatment, they base their methods of information collection on those used by hospitals. Okay, again, methods of information collection we don't really talk about, and the reason why they use the way hospitals do that, that's something which is not mentioned over here. Again, this is completely out of scope, this answer choice. Okay, so what did you learn from this exercise? We've been together for about 2 hours and 20 minutes. What have you learned when it comes to what does it take to acing? What does it take to ace GMAT RC? What are your takeaways? What are you gonna do to improve? What are your takeaways? Identify keywords. Focus on reading the passage in detail first. All right. More. You have understand important things and not to focus too much on the nitty gritty. Slow reading, slow and can. How many of you have heard this for the first time? That if you want to ace GMAT RC, read slowly and not worry about timing. Okay. Most test prep companies will tell you we're going to teach you tricks to read quickly. Um, we are the only company in the world that won't tell you that. Why? Because we understand that speed is an outcome. We don't build speed. We build the skill to read. When we build the skill to read, that speed happens automatically. Also, we are aware that if you don't build the skill to read, then you might speed up, you will not achieve accuracy, you will not achieve the score. Okay. And essentially, that's where you need to do two things. You need to start with mastering how to read slowly and improve comprehension. And that's where you kind of leverage those reading strategies, you leverage those keywords, you write those paragraph summaries, you inculcate good habits. And as you do that, you reach a level of ability that is way higher than what you have right now. Now, from that level of ability, You've got to leverage data to power your success. That is really, really important. Okay. Now, just in terms of data, one thing that we at e-GMAT do really, really well is we calculate data for every damn thing. Here is how things are going to work out for you. Okay. For most passages, if you read slowly, you're going to spend 3 minutes reading the passage. Now, today, these 3 minutes may be six, and that's absolutely okay. But you will get to those 3 minutes, trust me. Okay. Which means you're going to need about a minute answering questions. So when you get to, once you've mastered these reading strategies, once they become second nature to you, for 4 questions, you'll need about 7 minutes. For more difficult passages, you might even take 4 minutes to read. But the key thing about difficult passages is the questions there are relatively simpler. If you understand the information, the answer choices are not complex. You can reject them in about 45 seconds or so. Okay. Again, between 3 and 4 minutes is what you need to give. Doesn't mean you need to do that starting today. You need to do that probably 7 to 8 days from now, once you've spent enough time comprehending every element from about 25 passages. Okay. For those of you who go through speed reading, this is what happens. You go through the passage in 2 minutes. For every question, then you do back and forth. You end up taking the same 8 minutes, but your accuracy is way lower. How many of you have experienced this over here? The back and forth after doing speed reading. Don't get in that trap. You don't want to do back and forth. That's where you spend more time initially. We've had successful students who would go to the extreme where they would say, I'm going to read the passage while practicing, and I am not going to go back look at the passage. I'm going to get in the habit of making notes to such a degree where I don't have to go back to the passage. There are others who will play music while doing this so that they try and increase their ability to concentrate to that degree. It's very, very similar to you depriving your body of oxygen while running. And then the reason why you want to do that is because you want to simulate, you want to increase the strength of your heart. In the same way, by playing music in background, you want to increase the strength of your brain. Again, do you want to do that right away? Absolutely not. You first need to get those reading strategies in place by being in the best environment. Then as a second step, you want to further improve your resilience if you truly want that 90th percentile. Do you recommend making notes during the exam as well? Now, two things are going to happen. That's a great question. A lot of people ask this question. Um, right now, to improve comprehension, absolutely. Now, as you improve your comprehension, the need to make notes will go down. But you would still have to write down 1 or 2 words. I still do that. And I can go through a GMAT RC with about 4 to 5 questions in about 5 minutes. Okay. Because why? Because I have those sentence structures in my brain. The moment I read a sentence structure, the keywords automatically translate to visualizations in my brain the moment I do that. And that's where the time to answer questions come down. It's not because I read fast. I read really slow. But those visualizations, I don't take time to do that because I've done that so many times. Okay. If you comprehend a passage really well, you'd get to the answer in 45 seconds or so. And I'm saying this because over the last 4 years, we have delivered the lion's share of success reported on GMAT Club. In fact, if you go back the last 4 months, this 3 out of 5 is more around that 70 to 73%. So 3.5 to 3.6 out of 5, 700 plus scores reported on GMAT Club. And GMAT Club does a really good job of organizing these results chronologically. You can go verify that. Okay. And which means that if you statistically it's 3 out of 5, right now it's 3.5 out of 5. That's this is 40% is each one of these companies combined. 60% is just us. These are just 700 plus scores. Okay. Not only that, when it comes to 5-star reviews, No one else has as many 5-star reviews as we do. Okay, and it's not just that, it's also about the content of the reviews. You go read those reviews, people will talk about real struggles, people will. So when you go and read those reviews, it's not going to be all rosy that, oh, I read this and I was able to do that. No, they'll talk about where they struggled, how they overcame those struggles, because real journeys are about struggles. Okay. um, any person who doesn't struggle with anything probably didn't need the prep course to begin with. Okay. Here's one of our students who really said, hey, you should read all the text, not just the first and the last paragraph. As long as you understand the whole paragraph, it only takes 30 to 50 seconds to answer every question. Again, someone asked about using the meaning based approach in RC. That's the right way. That's is what we call as the SC hat. Nishant, another student who went to Columbia, he really says, spend time reading the passage. When you do that, you'd be able to answer questions in 40 to 60 seconds flat. Okay. Another guy who went, who got admitted, who got an admit from Kellogg, improved from V27 to V41. He says, in case of RC, I was forced to read the passage multiple times because he was doing speed reading, and when he went back to reading strategies, this is what happened. Okay, and right now we have 300 such instances on our YouTube channel. In fact, a lot of people really talk about how much can I improve. We had a student to improve from V14 to 14, that is, to V42. That's a seventh percentile to essentially a 96th percentile, and then he got a 760 on the GMAT. Just published a story on YouTube. So regardless of whether you're looking at someone who wants to improve from a Q30 to a Q50 or a V10 to a V40, you will see those stories. You'll be able to see their journeys. You'll be able to see how long did they take overall. Okay. And to do that, you've got to build your skill. And I think the thing that you've got to believe is, this is not something that you have to learn over years. It's something that you have to learn consciously. That's really important. And to learn consciously, that's where you have to apply these reading strategies. Um, and you have to inculcate these good habits where you read the passage, where you visualize information, you leverage keywords to do that, read that answer choice in isolation, and again, visualize it. Really important. And understand what your question is asking you. Okay. How do you do that? Start with learning how to read a sentence. That's where you go through the master comprehension course. A lot of people just skim through this because they feel it's really, really simple. Okay. Um, I go back to this course again and again because every time I go back to this, I learn something more. I learn why I made a mistake. What strategy was I not applying properly when I made a mistake? Um, Pausing, when to pause, how to pause and summarize is really important. And then once you do that, going through reading strategies files in the RC course is really important. And then going through each concept file where you're going through main point and detail, inference, structure, that's really important. And spend time on it. Don't just go through this because you have to finish these activities. Okay. Spend 30 minutes, understand how the incorrect answer choices are constructed, reject those answer choices for good, solid reasons. Don't just say, because this choice C seems better than choice D, I'm going to choose choice C. No. Why is choice D wrong? You have to be 100% certain about it. Don't move forward unless and until you're there. Okay. You do all of this, there's no reason why your score would be stuck, why you'd really be there. Ishani has questions. He says, for scoring 750, what's my accuracy in verbal? You need 75 to 80% accuracy in hard questions if you want to get 750, if you want to score 750. Whether you're talking about verbal or quant. 75 to 80% in hard questions. Let me be very clear. Medium and easy don't matter, because if you have 75 to 80% in hard questions, your accuracy in medium questions is going to be 95%. Easy, you probably won't even get. If you've stagnated around the 70th or the 80th percentile, let's kind of figure out where you stagnated, what's causing, what question types, what behaviors are causing that. Let's kind of figure out those behaviors within RC, if it's RC, or within CR, and those question types, those passage types, and then fix that. It's about when you're at that 80th percentile, it's a very specific fix, and that's where at e-GMAT we have this LMP program, last mile push, where we help you fix those behaviors and those strategies. And for those of you who need a study plan, we do offer some study plan slots. If you are if you're someone who doesn't have access to our PSP tool, so you can get your study plan here. I think we have about 8 to 9 slots that exist over here. If you're an e-GMAT student, you already have access to PSP, you have access to level 2 support. Make sure you write to them. If you have concerns, you write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. Okay. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer those. And let me share my the session PDF as well. Here is the session PDF. And those of you want to know about the debriefs in the session that I shared about, that's where that is. And for those of you who've not subscribed to our LinkedIn or our YouTube channel, make sure you do that over here. Okay. I have a question. It's like, how long did the student who improved from V14 to V42 take? It took him between 6 and 8 months. So it was it's a substantial improvement. So that's a fairly logical time when you're thinking about V14 to V42. About 150-point improvement. Someone says, okay, how long does a 150-point improvement take? That is usually about 200 hours of effort. And when you talk about 200 hours of effort, you're looking at about 2.5 to 3 months. How long is an RC passage? Tip minimum is about 325, maximum is about 450 words. So it's not super long overall. Okay. In questions where line 12 or line 15 is measured, how should we look at those questions? So that's where the question is asking you to specifying a certain context to you. So that's really, really good. So if you've read the passage well, then you'd understand what's happening in those lines, and in that particular context you should answer the question. What if I get stuck in the passage and I don't understand the language at all? How do I draw inferences? So usually the way you draw inferences, and this is a file in the course as well, you look at information before, you look at information after, and you connect that. That's how AI works. That's how humans work and learn. And there is no official passage that I've seen where you can't do this. Okay, so 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 that's something which is there. Every official passage allows you to do that. So, Ishani, there's nothing. I mean, if you feel there is a passage, an official passage where you can't do this, let me know. Because I have solved every official passage. How many passages are there on GMAT RC? 4, typically. In the Focus edition as well as in the current edition, you'll see 4 passages. In 90% of the cases. So yeah, always prepare for 4 passages overall. What reading sources would I suggest? The Economist. One of the best sources that's there overall. What percentage of your students get to a score of 700 or higher? So based on our internal tracking, about 35% of our students get to a score of 700 or higher. That's 3.5 times. Now consider this. We publish about 3x as many success stories as anyone else does. So you can infer what are the success rate that others have. Another 25 to 30% are in that 650 to 700 bracket. And when you compare this to the general test taking population, that's 3.5x as much of a benefit as you usually would get. But then when you think about people who hit our metrics internally, so the good thing about e-GMAT is it's very predictive. You know when you're going to hit that 700 score, or you know when you're not. So if you hit our internal metrics, then there's a 95% chance you're going to actually do well on the GMAT and get to your score within 20 points. If you do not hit the internal metrics, then there's also a 95% chance that you're not going to hit that 700 because you've not hit those metrics. Okay. What's the minimum GMAT score needed for PhD in the US? Depends on where you want to do the PhD, but if you were looking at good schools, 740 is what I would recommend. I mean, NCERT, not just US, but also NCERT and LPS, 740 is what they look at. It's a really analytical mindset that they're looking for. Okay. All right, guys. With that, hopefully this was useful. Hopefully you're going to apply what you've learned over here, and then you go from there. How do you maintain an error log? I'll give you the short and the long answer. The long answer is we have an entire error log module in SC, CRR, Quant. So go look at that module. It will tell you how to maintain an error log. It will give you a template. It will coach you on how to do this. The short of it is, don't just make an error log which says, hey, this is the mistake that I made. It's a modifier mistake. I did not, or the fact that I did not understand this word or that word. That's one level of error logging, and that is what I call as the benefit of it. That is very, very limited. The reason why the second level of error logging that you want to really just say is you want to really put in what I call as a causal or a behavioral error log. So say if you did not consider a certain word, why did you not consider a certain word? Did you not focus on summarizing? Were you rushing through reading the paragraph at that point in time? If you rejected an answer choice, did you not stop and read and analyze the answer choice in isolation, and you directly really ask this question whether this is the correct or the incorrect answer? Okay. So that's it that you do. So make that behavioral error log, and you're going to find you will never get stuck. Does e-GMAT contain an AWA course as well? We don't, because no one has asked for it. When people go through our CR and RC courses, they just do AWA right away. In fact, our students have written guides on AWA. So no one has come back asking for it. Let me just be very clear. So if you do the CR and RC courses, you won't need any help with AWA. Okay. And Kaushal and Ishani, thank you for the feedback and the praise. We really appreciate that. And we'll see you in the geometry session tomorrow. Good luck and have a great day. Thank you very much, guys. Go study well, get a good score, and make us proud. The geometry session is exactly at the same time, 9 a.m. Indian, 8:30 p.m. Pacific. I think really early for Europe.